I want to tell you a little bit about a visionary named Buckminster Fuller. He was an edge walker, he was an architect, he was a futurist, he was a visionary. And in the spirit of Fuller's amazing imagination and innovation, the Buckminster Fuller Institute was started 40 years ago. And today we continue his spirit of innovation with the BFI Design Lab. So really, we're looking at innovation systems that can support systems change. And these innovation systems are moonshots or really earthshots, and looking at pathways to strategically address planetary thriving. And as we see the sad collapse of ecosystems around us, one of the most critical things that we can do is really rewild the planet to preserve what we can, to reconnect what we can of intact ecosystems, and dig in and restore soil, water, reconnect, reweave at continental scale, even to planetary scale. So rewilding is really one of the deepest kinds of systems change that we can possibly imagine, moving from extraction, fundamentally, to regeneration. This is very personal for me. So I grew up here, the northern tip of the Salish Sea, on an island recently named Vancouver Island, but really part of the traditional territory of the Kwakiutl people who've inhabited this area for at least 10,000 years. This is the rugged Pacific coast of North America, heading all the way through the coastal temperate rainforest that stretches from about here, a little bit north of here, all the way to southeast Alaska. And growing up here in what's now called Campbell River, I was surrounded with mountains wreathed in clouds, with orcas, humpback whales, fjords, archipelagos. All of it was braided, all of it was woven together. It was life in its infinite diversity and complexity, and I soaked it up. I learned from it as best I could. So in the BFI Design Lab, the focus on rewilding takes many forms, and I want to share two projects today. One is the Indigenous Rewilding Network. It's led by the amazing indigenous organization Flower Hill Institute, located at the Jemez Pueblo in New Mexico. The Indigenous Rewilding Network is doing a couple of really profound things. It's working on land rematriation, land return to indigenous communities across the United States. And it's looking at rewilding land with an indigenous lens, incorporating Western science where that's helpful, with indigenous job creation. And we do this with three key pieces within the network. So one is an Indigenous Rewilding Fund that can support the amazing regenerative enterprises that grow around these rewilding projects. They can include hospitality, they can include regenerative agriculture, many things. And the fund can also work with land acquisition over time. Second piece is an Indigenous Rewilding Institute that's an amazing training institute for indigenous stewards that can work with this kind of returned land, rematriated land, and work with various tribal land projects around the United States. And the third piece is a land trust that is crafted with an indigenous lens, looking at property from a different perspective. So all of this is culminating in the first project for the network, rewilding and returning to a tribal coalition, a 50,000-acre ranch in New Mexico. It's extraordinary. It's at about 9,000 feet, a lot of elk, incredible habitat. And it's happening. It's a beautiful approach where you steward the land for 2 to 3 years with a tribal coalition, demonstrate management capacity for the rewilding process, for the various regenerative enterprises, and then the land is rematriated. It's returned to tribal stewards. So underway on this ranch, other pieces of land are being explored as well. Second example of rewilding, so going from this gorgeous highlands of New Mexico to the Sinai Peninsula in northern Egypt, this amazing company called the Weathermakers, a Dutch engineering company that figured out how to do what they call regenerative dredging. They can actually restore lagoons and wetlands of all kinds with very careful, precise dredging cuts. So at the tip of the Sinai Peninsula is this huge lagoon, Bardiwa Lagoon. The team has an amazing vision of actually doing this dredging to restore the lagoon to life, have a much more alive connection with the ocean, do the dredging, detoxify the sediments, use those sediments to bring vegetation cover, and then as you bring back the lagoon, the wetlands around it, the vegetative cover going up the hills, trees being planted at ridgetops, you literally can transform the climate. This becomes a global acupuncture point for climate, because if we can bring back vegetation and moisture in this particular part of the Mediterranean basin, the winds will slightly change. So you have this gentle breeze going up from the Indian Ocean, and you have a closure of the Mediterranean basin. It doesn't leak out hot, dry air anymore. It can retain more moisture. And there are acupuncture points like this all over the world that the Weathermakers and others have identified, like the atmospheric rivers of the Amazon basin. So rewilding ourselves, rewilding investment, rewilding our connection to the world. So what would it mean to rewild impact investment itself? Can you imagine rewilding impact investment? Rewilding timescales, space, species, possibilities, and ourselves in the process. Thank you all for the work that you're doing to rewild the world.